Jeff Salz. For those of you online who don't know him, he's an author, adventurer, and anthropologist. He's currently watching and waiting out this coronavirus while sitting on the equator. He earned his PhD in anthropology during a half-century of studying wisdom of individuals and cultures while mountaineering and exploring the wildest corner of the planet, including Patagonia, the Amazon, Outer Mongolia, Eastern Siberia, Chinese Turkestan, and the Himalayas of Tibet. A celebrated best-selling author, his book Way of Adventure, which I have right here, shares the secrets of man's resilience to adversity, and it's widely recognized as the definitive book on adventure. He's asked by C-level executive teams at global organizations like Google, Microsoft, Walmart, eBay, and even the Walt Disney Company to turn to him for inspiration as well as training. He's an internationally known television journalist and a frequent host on the Discovery Channel, and he's appeared on the early morning show for CBS as their go-to adventure expert. Today, as you guys all know, in Ecuador, he makes his home in Cuenca, where he continues to live a life of adventure with his lovely wife, Lisa Jaffe. That's our guest today, and he is working hard to get back online. And it looks like he is in the room right now. It is my pleasure to I don't know what's going on. There's a lot of noises. He was in the room. We're getting him. Microphone and camera on. This, talk about. Hey!
We're back.
Okay, the problem here.
We haven't started
drinking yet. Okay, I just read your biography. So Jeff, now that you're on, and I'll tell you, I know you had additional problems that have nothing to do with this. But the problem that when we had everybody in the room and they're saying, hey, are you guys starting? Jeff and I had already been talking for 5 minutes, and I had failed to push the green button, which doesn't say, it's just a green button that looks like a phone, which is the wrong button I needed to push to go live.
It's hard to get good help these days. I understand that.
Man, all of this this crazy stuff. So I'm going to go back and chat.
Well, I want to thank all our viewers, most of whom are family and friends of mine. I see, and the rest are family and friends of yours. Thank you for your patience. Boy, we were hustling and we unplugged and replugged, and all the people. My son Jack was calling, and it is to help us out. So. It's a miracle. It's a fact that humans are fallible, and so is technology. But somehow it came together. And thank you for hanging in there. If you're not there, what the heck?
It's still coming. Here's the thing, and I had this great little. I don't call it a speech, but I had this kind of I was talking before, Jeff, as you heard me, but nobody else was because I didn't click the goddamn green button. But I was asking people, how are you feeling? Especially in these uncertain times. And I can tell you, during that whole debacle where I know that we had a lot of people in the room who had no clue, I'm feeling pretty shitty, to be honest with you. Okay.
You mean at that moment, or in your life at this moment? In that
just
moment
at that moment of like, what happened to Jeff? I can see him, I can't hear him. Not pushing the green button. Like I felt like an idiot, and that's got nothing to do with the times of Corona. And it just is like, what are you gonna do? So,
my newest friend John Saunders wrote with great wisdom, "There's your adventure."
So I just read, I'm going to say this thing again because I think it was apropos. Even though we all know, I just think that it's a time that when you're not feeling right, like I wasn't feeling right at that moment, is to express yourself. And it's okay not to be okay, and there's nothing wrong with talking about it. You should cry or otherwise hang your head low, and it's also okay to laugh about it and make jokes. And adventure is, and I was just, talking about the Way of Adventure, Jeff, while you were rebooting and doing that, and it's the definitive book on adventure. And with what your new friend, what was his name?
John Saunders.
I'm going to read something out of your book. Do you mind? Can I use
your
book?
I like it already.
Okay. And I want to go right into this because I do want to come back to the Chinese jail story that you told us, but nobody was listening because I didn't have the mic on. I didn't have the thing on. Okay. So this is in Jeff's book. It's under the Scale Your Inner Mountaintop chapter. And I'm just going to read one paragraph because it's apropos for what you just said and what Saunders just said. It says, for some of us, the travel plan of choice includes a trip to the locale where the ice drops away 5,000 feet behind our boot heels. We require the periodic dose of danger, the occasional lambada with lady luck. For others, personal growth does not require a constant dose of discomfort and repetitive exposure to the wind, the cold, the cranky customs officials. For the adrenaline addicted, I'm the bearer of bad news. Danger may not be adventure's song, but adventure is not necessarily danger. Peak experiences wherever we decide to find them, even in our backyards. Of course, closer to home, we may actually have to work a little harder to find it.
Oh, that's good. Who wrote that?
My guest today on the Journeys podcast, I'd like everybody to know, Jeff Salz is here. And yes, I mean, we're in lockdown here. What really is adventure then? If it's not adrenaline addicted, if it's not getting on a motorcycle and trying to traverse the Namibian desert or the Nubian plains of Sudan.
Well, adventure in some ways is sort of it's kind of an artificial construct. We go out to create a sense of excitement and importance and drama in our lives because it doesn't necessarily exist in our more day-to-day life. Well, interestingly enough, I mean, we are right now living, what could be more adventurous than living on the cusp of history? I mean, we're living in this moment, the greatest adventure anyone alive has ever lived. And as a culture and as an individual, I think, wow, the page is turning. I'm writing that page. This is incredible. We don't have to go, we were locked up, but adventure has really come to us. We don't have to create any artificial, we don't have to go to the Disneyland of the Himalayas or take a pogo stick to cross the South Pole. I mean, just staying at home, locked up, we are making history. And all of our constructs, all of our faith, all of our wisdom is being challenged. And what else is adventure but exactly that?
And to John's point, of course, I just went through a crazy adventure. First of all, trying to find you. I don't have your phone number, and I'm trying to want to help you technically. I did this. That was a whole journey in itself, and we're here at the
in 3 minutes, a whole hero's journey.
That was exactly it. I mean, a lot of people. The reason I started this webcast, Jeff, as you know, is to get the idea across that we are all in this together. It's not a cliche, and yet how perspective can really frame how we survive, or how we tackle this, or how we just emotionally kind of make sense of it all. And there's uncertainty, there's fear, there's doubt, there's all that, but there's also huge headings of desire right now. Desire. Talk about that, how things are changing, and how do we adapt, and how do we use perspective to kind of take us somewhere?
Well, you say desire, maybe it's hope. We're getting a vision. One reason we climb mountains is we get a perspective on what we ordinarily don't see. We get a more elevated view of what's possible. And I think that's part of, along with the despair, is the desire for something better than before. And it took that sort of craziness of everything falling apart for it to kind of come back together, but we're kind of back together in a heightened state. We're all excited, and we're all like not playing host, and we're like here. So I think that's what's happening too. We are in a moment where we have been forced to let go of the things we have to let go of the myth of security that we've embraced for so long. I think one problem that we just had was that I think I lost connection. Ecuador, we were watching Netflix last night, and we had to stop watching Netflix and go to a book because we lost our internet. And I'm sure it's because of the confusion and chaos which is reigning all over the world. So we're losing the misconceptions we held that the status quo is the way it's always been and must be. And with that comes the vision of what's possible, like the chrysalis. The caterpillar, I didn't know this till recently, doesn't just change shape and become a butterfly. First, it dissolves into this mush of nothingness. Well, I think we're all kind of in a mushy nothingness state in our lockdowns. And from this state of chrysalis, yes, I think we're seeing that we're not just the victims, but we're the protagonists in this amazing novel, which is the novel Corona-19. And we're the authors that can write the outcome as differently and as interestingly and as creatively and positively as we collectively choose.
Yeah.
That makes any sense.
Yeah, no, amen to that here. Toast to that here.
Oh, toast to that.
Hey, I'd like to ask all of our guests who finally and were patient, get a glass of wine, a beer, or whatever your vice of choice
Real
is.
adventurers drink scotch, lad.
Mm.
The real adventurer.
I'm drinking a Torrontés. This is from Argentina. There's no really wine made in Ecuador, by the way, but this is not far away. They do grow it in the very southern part of Bolivia on the Argentina border, and this is from Cafayate, or of course, as they say in Argentina, Cafayate. And it is a higher elevation. This kind of grape, white grape, does well there. But that's enough of the wine talk. You're drinking scotch.
Yeah,
I like
if
that.
you are going to drink wine, Alan, at least drink it out of the bottle. There you go.
This is so true. So you know, coming back to perspective in this. Yeah, I keep going. You and I chatted the other day as we were talking about what we were going to talk about, and you looked back at that gorgeous room with the nice colors on the wall and Jaffe's artwork, and it's very comfortable. You made a choice and moved from your homeland.
Yeah.
To change, and so you're not like, you didn't get stuck there like last week's guests are stuck in Uruguay, and they frankly would love to be getting their way back home. That is your home.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of an adventure there. How did that come back?
Well, I got to say, when I was 19, I first came to South America to climb, and it felt right somehow. The values of community, of a sense of connectedness, the folk culture being so vital, and of course the wild mountains. So I just, dreamt someday I could make it back. And then just few years ago, 3 years ago now, Jack was off to college. Yeshi, my daughter, was about to graduate from college. And I got a note that I had money called Social Security coming my way. And I realized that for the little bit of money I was going to make, I could either work very hard and use that to pay for 3 nights of dinner in Del Mar, or live for a year in Ecuador. So Jaffe and I said, let's just go. And it's the best thing we've ever done. I mean, of course, I miss the kids and I miss my friends, but we walk out the door in the morning and we're in a different world, where the beauty of adventure and travel is just being in an environment which is different than what you're accustomed to. Your somnambulism fades. You're more awake, because everything is curious. That's why you tire easily when you travel. You're making 1,000 new decisions and discoveries in a day, many tiny ones and big ones. So we opted, I got to say, for a life of adventure and a life of economy. We didn't have to work so much and work so hard to be as happy as we are.
I'm showing a map so people have a perspective of where you are. This is Ecuador and northwestern South America. These are the Galapagos Islands, which are also part of Ecuador. And then if I'm going to just kind of zoom in, we'll clear out my thing. This is Cuenca, where that red dot is right here.
I'm waving. If you look real close, you can see me waving.
Yes, yeah, hey, and also what you see here, these are the Andean Mountains. And Jeff, where are you? You're sitting at what, about
8,500, and then we're on the 12th floor of our apartment, so we're 8,560 or something.
8,560. So yeah. That's pretty tall. And to give perspective, there's the the regular map, but I also like to look at how close you are to the to your east is Peru, and to your north is Colombia, and all of this area, and this is the Amazon and the Amazon basin. But look how dry it gets. Yeah. I mean, you got the most luscious rainforest in the world, and just hundreds of miles to the west is the driest place on the planet.
Right, Atacama Desert, driest place on the planet. And all through there's remarkable indigenous tribes, the Mountain Quechua, the Amazonian Shuar, the Achuar, so many tribes. So to be down here is pretty exciting, because it doesn't take long to get someplace really remarkable. And I'm the adventure travel editor for it's the largest magazine in Ecuador, Cuenca Expats Magazine. So our job is to go out and cause trouble and find remarkable things. So it's very cool.
So, we all are, as we say, in this together, this Corona thing. And I'm in California. Our guests are from all over the world. How is it being in a different culture where, how are people there responding to this? Are you locked down? What
Yeah.
are, yeah.
Yeah, we're locked down, curfew at 2 o'clock, 7 days a week. Only allowed to go out, just kind of like I think anyone in the States, same kind of lockdown as you have there. Saturday and Sundays, no private vehicles are allowed on the streets. So it's pretty serious. In Guayaquil, people have been worried about us. They estimate 8,000 deaths. That's just 3 hours over the mountain. They did not observe the quarantine rules. No one knows exactly why, but it's really it's not a good scene over there. And we're, as I say, 4 hours away, and we've had 30 deaths in Cuenca. People here are feeling pretty upbeat, and they're observing the rules and regulations. But I'll say something about South America is that it's not like, I remember I was in California 4 years ago when there was a power outage just for a few hours, and we never thought it could happen. In Ecuador, I think we're kind of used to chaos. In October, the country shut down for a massive citizens revolt led by the indigenous people, and that was crazy. So people are going, this is the crisis du jour, and we'll handle it.
So when when there were civil unrest in Lebanon, Chile, you guys experienced there in Ecuador as well.
The whole country was shut down, and the roads were blocked, and things were on fire. But what I loved about Cuenca, it was massive strikes. We were actually leading an expedition in northern Ecuador at that time. I think Bev is on the call. She was on that trip. We managed to make it work somehow, and we heard about Cuenca in flames, but we came back like 3 days after the flames subsided. And it's such a wonderful populace here that they were already out, people with brooms and brushes and cleaning up the city. So we partied, we burnt, and now we're cleaning up.
Oh, yeah. I want to show a little video to give some people who haven't been had the opportunity, like me, to be with you. I've been in Cuenca, actually. I've stayed overnight in Cuenca on an all different journey there. But this is just a quick what Jeff likes to say is a walk home. Let me get it to the point where
It's our summer cottage.
The summer cottage.
Our country cottage. We go there quite often. It's just 30 minutes out of Cuenca, and it is magnificent. It's like Switzerland. Little ladies with big milk things on their back coming down the road to sell them to the big trucks that go by, and farmers. It's really bucolic. Wonderful.
Yeah, very nice. Hey, we're gonna come back to Ecuador, and I just love that stretch, and I love Jaffe in that video. It gives me, I like looking at you, but let's face it, she makes for a great plant in a video walking through those beautiful forests. Your adventure, as you mentioned just a bit ago, you came to South America for your first time in your teens, 19, let's say, and went climbing. And this was some of that adrenaline addiction that was driving the young Jeff Salz at 19 and 20. And you had quite the experience. I also wanted to mention that a lot of my people have seen the other two webcasts. We had Overland travelers, motorcyclists, tune in for this webcast, but Jeff is not a motorcyclist, but if he is going to go overland, and he's done a lot of overlanding, as we'll talk a little bit about in China, but in South America, he's covered, if not 1,000, more than 1,000 miles on horseback. And if anyone who's ever been on a horseback, the only thing more uncomfortable, at least, I'm not an equestrian model, but is a camel. And horses are definitely better than a camel. But you did lots of miles, and at one point, you also went overland in a very old jalopy, an old Ford truck, and then in your pursuit and this adrenaline-driven rage of youth that you wanted to climb mountains, you decided to climb perhaps the toughest mountain in all of South America, not in terms of elevation, just in sheer rock. And that experience up on that rock changed your life for good. Can we get into a little bit of that? And then I want to go 30 years later.
Okay, sure. I know some folks may have to leave this because we're supposed to go for an hour, well over an hour. So,
well, I'd love you guys to stick around if you can. There will be a replay of this. Sadly, we didn't get started till 30 minutes. So I'm going to take this till 4:30 Pacific Standard Time. So we've been on about a half an hour now, 36 minutes. And some of that was still getting Jeff's stuff. So if you guys want to stick around, please do. We got a lot of great stories, and we're really getting into the meat of this right now. And this is real important stuff, I think. So stick around. And if not, I'll send you the link to the replay and you'll get it later.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. It's lovely.
Hey, if you just tuned in, for some of you though, I should let you know this is I'm Alan Carl, host of Journeys. We're sitting down with Jeff Salz, Dr. Jeff Salz, anthropologist, adventure mountaineer, Hall of Fame speaker, among many other things. And he is talking to us from his home in Cuenca, Ecuador. We're talking about how to find adventure when you can't maybe leave your lockdown state. But we're also talking about journeys in the past and how they can frame our lives as we move forward and to the future. So there you are in a Ford pickup truck.
Yeah. So we I'll tell this, it's strange when you have such a short period of time, but basically, there are four of us, and two of them, Randy Udall and a guy named Bill Martin, flew back from Peru, bought a pickup truck, drove it all the way back to Urubamba, Machu Picchu, in 14 days, 1973. Then we all jumped in the truck, me and my buddy Steve McAndrews and Noel Cox, a gal from Tucson. There were like 7 of us on the expedition, and we drove all the way to Buenos Aires, through Bolivia to Buenos Aires, and then across to Patagonia, and then we saw Fitzroy, which is, as you say, perhaps the most challenging, genuinely enormous mountain. There's spires and towers like Torre Egger and Cerro Torre, but Fitzroy is a mountain. It's substantial. It looks like a giant dragon's tooth rising up in the pampa over 11,000 feet, with 5,000 feet of solid rock. So it was agreed that 4 of us would go up, 2 New Zealanders and 2 Americans, and try and make the summit. It had been climbed twice, I think, before, second time by Yvon Chouinard. They were the Americans to climb it. We would have been the 4th.
Yvon Chouinard was the founder of Patagonia.
Yeah. So 4 of us went up, and only 2 of us came down. The other 2 at a moment on the mountain. We're sleeping 3 days, hanging on the cliff from ropes, basically. Yeah, there's Fitzroy. So we were about 2/3 of the way up, we think, when the weather changed. So it was agreed 2 would go up and 2 would come down, and we thought the 2 going up were the heroes, and they would be the ones that would make the summit and be successful. And we felt sad coming down, but ultimately we came down. We didn't see them come down the next day, and then another day later, our group found the bodies of my best friend, Steve McAndrews, this cowboy from Texas that I was just real close with, and Kevin Carroll, the New Zealand climber, the leading New Zealand climber at that time. We found their bodies at the base of the mountain. So at age 20, I had turned 20 in Patagonia. Yeah, there's me in the middle. That's me cooking on the stove, and that's McAndrews and Kevin on our first night's bivvy. There were 3 nights bivvy on the way up. We hoped to get up and down in 3 days, but when day 3 began, we were still on our way up. So we knew that a group of 2 would climb twice as quickly as 4. So David and I, who's taking the picture, rappelled, and we rappelled for 12 hours to get back down. And we obviously survived, but we lost our 2 mates. And it changed my life forever. It was one of those moments that you hope never happens in an adventure, but when it does, it alters who you are. It expands your vision of what's possible and what life's about. It gives you a sense of the evanescence and fleetingness of life. So I think at some level, it made me an adventurer for the rest of my life, because I knew that life had a beginning and an end, and I wanted to fill up as much as I could of that middle with outrageous experiences and not waste a minute of it.
How did you drive the pickup truck back to the States?
No, the pickup truck was sold. I flew with Steve's body back to Buenos Aires and then flew back by myself because we had trouble getting the body back to the States. I don't really know. I never thought about that in all these years, but Bill and Randy also flew back. It was not something they wanted to do. Was
nothing. But how do you process? You go on a mountain, you guys are looking at this big sheer wall of granite. You are thinking, yeah, we're going to get to the top. As I read in your book a little bit ago, you know, that the peak experiences are what you make them. And to get to that peak, you never made it to the peak. And you had this, I mean, this was your best friend. This was your buddy.
Yeah.
How do you fly back with his body and confront his parents?
I mean, it was a terremoto. It was an earthquake inside me. I was not at all rational, or especially when you're only 20 years old, you know, you don't think this is ever going to happen. You think you're invincible. And his parents, you know, I reached out to them, of course, and explained to them what happened. And it was funny. His parents said that they knew he wasn't going to come back. There was something in his eyes, something remarkable. You know, when these things happen, you enter these kind of very transcendental states, like his parents saying, we knew he wasn't going to return. And there was a sense of all this being right. Like McAndrews was such an amazing character. It was as if that at age 20, 21, he had lived an entire lifetime. There was even an age in his eyes. So somehow all this was what it was supposed to be. And then I was obviously supposed to, I've told the story of McAndrews and his death without exaggeration, 200-300 times for large audiences, you know, from 10 people to thousands of people. So somehow it all, I guess to make sense of something like that is you have to make sense of it. You have to say this must have happened for some reason, or find a reason you can attribute to it. That's how we stay sane. And an adventure really is something from which you learn, something you invest in, and then you hopefully bring that lesson back to share with others.
You know, not being a mountaineer, but certainly being a hiker, you know, and I've hiked up to Tres Lagos, you know, which is like almost the portals of those granite spires.
Tres Hermanos.
Yeah.
Tres Amigos.
Tres Amigos. Yeah. Tres Amigos. There's a photo here. I'll bring it up a bit, but if you don't make it, and in this case, that mountain, as just me internalizing it, you know, took somebody from you. Do you look at it that way?
No, you could never attribute the mountain. It's no evil spirit. It's nothing. The mountain is the mountain. The mountain is beautiful. It's a proving ground for us and our souls and our energy. It's there for us to make of it what we will. But you never blame the mountain. You never conquer a mountain. You know. The mountain is always your friend. The mountain is always your love.
Your love. At what point did you decide that you did want to go back to that mountain and take another stab? When did that start brewing?
I remember exactly the moment. I was walking with my friend Stephen Myers, that many people who are in this chat room or whatever this watching this know, and I was turning 50, and Stephen Myers says, anything left in your life? We were both kind of gloating how we have no bucket list left. And I said, you know what? I never climbed Fitzroy. I still have this fear inside me. I feel like I let McAndrews down. I wasn't climbing as I should have. If anything's left, I guess the only thing would be to go back and climb Fitzroy, but that's ridiculous at age 50. And he said, let's do it. If you go, I'll go with you. And so I said, okay, you know, it was good actually, age 50, middle age, to have something which is so enormous, it galvanizes you to getting back in shape. And so by age, I guess it was 48 when I made the decision, because I trained for 2 years intensively, took all of my life savings out of the bank so I could climb relentlessly and hire guides and teachers and climb all over the West and go up and down, go up Half Dome. You know, I got in the best shape of my life at age 50. And then I went back with Myers to try and climb Fitzroy.
I want to give some perspective here that Fitzroy, for those of you who are not mountaineers, Fitzroy is what's the elevation? It's like
11,000 something.
It's not about the height of the mountain. There are, especially at the time Jeff made his first attempt and his second attempt, there is probably, you know, fewer than you have hands and fingers and toes. And to this day, more people summit Mount Everest in the Himalayas than have ever in all of history summited this mountain. Isn't
Well,
that right?
Some people summit Everest in a day.
In a day, that's
Ever,
yeah.
Never summited Fitzroy.
That ever in history have summited. This is what it looks like hiking up there. Some of these pictures didn't get tilted, but that's that mountain. We saw that image before. I mean, it almost looks fake as I look at these pictures. And
I've been around the back, and it's real.
Yeah, and I will say this: I was there for a few days, and for the one day that I made this hike, there were no clouds around that, and that is so rare. That happens, they say, maybe 3 times a year. There it is. Now you could just wait up in 2 minutes, and the clouds will just come in. But it is a beautiful, majestic mountain, and you just sit there with awe, looking at this beauty. I want to run a video because you did decide after 2 years of training and you went up there. Let's look at this and see. You got that hat.
I still got the same hat.
That's
Speaking
awesome.
of hats, did you notice that on my helmet it says "I love Fitzroy"?
Yes, I did know that. Absolutely, I love Fitzroy, and that's why I was asking you earlier about, is a mountain ever a nemesis? And I love the way you answered that.
Yeah. No, I still love Fitzroy. I love what it provided me the chance to do, and it provided me some incredible lessons on that last climb. Andrew asked me if there are different lessons on the second climb. Well, the second one, I realized I didn't want anybody to die. That was the most important thing. And I had just had this young son, Jack, I don't know if he's still on the call, who had asked me before I went on the climb, was my love for him, was he more important than dying? So I made the conscious decision with my group to turn back. And I think that's really the biggest lesson of all, is that, like I say in that little video, I had nothing to prove to McAndrews. He's gone. I had nothing to prove to myself, except to really say, I want to be alive. I want to be the best person I can be. That there's nothing up there is the key. Where it is exactly where you are. And adventure is, like I say, it's not a thing. It's just it's a road that takes you somewhere profound and vital and meaningful. So I love Fitzroy, and I thank it for all it's done for me in my life. It took me some pretty cold, it's a snow cave that we lived in for quite a while on this last trip.
Yeah, you had to you waited and waited until you
6 weeks it took us to not climb the mountain.
It took you 6 weeks to decide to come home and not get to the mountain. How does that feel?
It's a great lesson. We were going to make a movie about it, but realized nobody wants to watch a movie where nothing happens. There's no climax. But isn't that more like life? It's really much more like life, that it isn't a cinematic, climatic. It is what it is. Uh, it's not really going anywhere. It's being where you are. So it was great. I thought it was really poetic to make a movie where we don't actually make the summit, but the producers did not agree with me, so hence no movie.
So no movie.
Yeah.
As I was reading your bio and we were sorting through the technology, going from the snow caves that you had to build and live in for weeks at a time in Patagonia, and the sheerest, hardest, one of the hardest mountains in the world to climb, to China, Western China, and you were thrown into jail in Western China. So let alone how you have to battle the winds, the mountain, the weather, and just the anxiety of waiting and wondering, to the point where you now have a whole different objective, and that is how to deal with people in a different culture and a different language. And what happened in China? How did you find yourself in a Chinese jail in Western China?
Well, I was arrested a couple of times. At least I was stopped and I was interrogated and held for a period of time, and house arrest and all that. But I always want to go where people haven't been, and I always like to be in the mountains. And I'm trying to kind of one quest was to find the secret of Shangri-La. Was there an actual geographical location for the story of Shambhala, which is the mythic origin for the Shangri-La legend that we know because of James Hilton's book, Lost Horizon? So I'm inevitably in a place where I'm the only guy wandering around that's not from there. And I'm on mountaintops that tend to be borderlines. So I'm usually on some kind of a disputed border by myself, looking very suspicious. But really, I'm just poking around. So that's how I wound up in being arrested a couple of times by the Chinese police. But ultimately, I've got to say, people are people. I was never really threatened or injured. It seemed like I was misunderstood, but ultimately, like I say, the real hero is not the Indiana Jones. That's an archetype I really don't go with. With guy with a whip stealing stuff. I go much more with the E.T. This kind of innocent stranger who's really just trying to learn something and go home. And people recognize, even if they haven't seen Spielberg's movies, I think they recognize the difference. So ultimately, all my stories have ended the same way. I wind up getting in trouble or getting lost, and people come to my aid. And maybe that's really relevant, for what we're talking about, the time of coronavirus. Yeah. Because I think all of us right now feel really lost and confused, kind of as you did when the whole webcast fell
apart. Where's my guest? People are here. They're this is not the way to do it.
And everyone came to our aid. I was getting Bobo called, and Dick Plush called, and my son Jack called, and you called, and everybody was making suggestions. So, I think whenever we throw ourselves on the goodness of humanity and simply say, we are lost in this chaos, we don't know what to do, a positive outcome seems almost always guaranteed, or at least it's our very best bet. And that's probably the greatest lesson I've learned through my adventuring.
Yeah. And I agree. The kindness of strangers, it always comes back. You and I had an email conversation recently about some of the posts I've been putting on my blog have been a lot, because I love wine. It's one of my passions. And I've been traveling through Eastern Europe and the Balkans, the former Yugoslavia, Eastern Europe, and meeting so many people that are coming up out of, a half a century of communism, and with, talk about hard times and, future and possibilities and hope. And it's tough there. They're still saddled with the legacy of communism, but those people that are making a way by doing something what they love, it kind of drives me. So my stories are less about the wine, although I will talk about it, have been about really the people. And it's amazing how nice you are. I crashed my motorcycle in Cuenca under that bridge that I told you about as I was traveling south to Ushuaia, and I couldn't lift the bike up. And moments later, a local comes by and says, hey, can I help you? Pick up the bike and get it back on the road again. I just put a poll up and most people are answering it, I can see. And since we're in China, I know that you've kind of been grappling with this, wondering about being an anthropologist and understanding things. You probably ate some pretty weird stuff when you were in China, as I did. And you're working on a new essay. And I've asked people if they know what a pangolin is without Googling. And we have about 55% of the people know what a pangolin is, and about 50%, it's ranging. They're still answering. Actually, now we have 54% no. We're seeing the numbers. Still quite a few people in the room. Thank you for sticking around. After we get through a little bit of pangolin talk, I want to go to Q&A, and we've got some other things that I've missed here, but we'll get to that. What is your fascination with the pangolin, and how does it relate to the coronavirus? And first, for those people that don't know, let them know. I'm talking with Jeff Salz, adventurer, mountaineer, Hall of Fame speaker, now living in Cuenca, whose best-selling book, Way of Adventure, is the definitive source. And now we are talking about pangolins. What the hell is a pangolin, Jeff?
Well, we're this household, we're very pro-pangolin. Very pro-pangolin.
Oh, P squared.
Yeah. The pangolin may be the cause of the pandemic. No one has ultimately been able to pin the rap on any animal, but it appears that the pangolin may be the vector. If there's ever been a more innocent perpetrator, it's the pangolin. Pangolins, they're in the species, they're carnivora. They're not anteaters. They're also called scaly anteaters, but they're really more related to dogs and cats. They're solitary animals, live mostly underground. 20% of their weight is in scales. It's the only scaled mammal. Their tongues are as long as their body. They're rooted somewhere deep inside near their pelvis, and they use those tongues to go scoop out ants and termites. And they're harmless. They're not aggressive.
No teeth.
They have no teeth. They just have a tongue, and they could. And so how does this wind up being the source of this disease, which has killed hundreds of thousands of people and brought suffering to millions more? Well, it turns out that these horseshoe bats, and I've been doing a lot of research. I've become kind of obsessed with this because I'm doing an article that I'll finally get out this week, and did you make sure I have if you're not on my mailing list, let me know. But it appears that bats contain all these viruses, and yet they don't affect the bats. The bats are like super virus containers. But anyway, there isn't a vector naturally from the bats. It's just who they are. And there's 20% of 1/5 of all mammals are bats. I didn't know that. So bats either pooped in the termite colonies that the pangolins maybe ate the termites from, because somehow the viruses combined. The bats and the pangolin viruses combined and made this novel COVID-19 virus. Also, people think it may have been in the wet markets of Wuhan, where they crate these, because pangolins are sought after now because they're supposed to have this magical property in their scales that cures everything from impotence, male impotence. Everything's supposed to cure that.
That's the new rhino's horn.
Exactly. Yeah, and everything. Depression doesn't matter. The scales they powder and sell all over the world, and the meat is a delicacy at very high-end restaurants. So about 1 million pangolins are smuggled across international lines every year. It makes it it's the most trafficked animal in the world. And they're thrown alive into boiling water. They're horribly treated, mistreated, and ultimately they wind up on the same chopping block with bats. So somehow or other, the virus has recombined in the pangolins. People, they are around the pangolin. They eat the meat. Somehow they ingest some aspect that it might even be in the keratin scales. So the pangolin seems to be the vector that brought the virus to the human being. And of course, what it says to me is that the pangolins are not doing this on purpose. It's we who are diminishing the territory of the pangolin, invading their natural habitats, and eating millions and killing millions of these marvelous non-aggressive creatures. It's almost like Mother Nature saying, you're not just eating the pangolins out of house and home, you're eating the pangolins. So maybe this is in some way the pangolin's revenge on the species that's decimating habitats all over the world. Of course, I'm just sorry for the human. It's just a sorry mess that so many have to die. But I think it may be a way that Mother Nature is saying, human beings, get a hold of yourselves. Look what you're doing to the planet. And because these they're called zoonotic diseases may only be increasing if we don't change our behavior. There you have it.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, we've got a few questions coming through, and then we're gonna slowly start to wind this down. Though I'm having so much fun. But first of all, what is your PhD in? Michael wants to know.
Pangolins.
Okay, and this was
it's in folklore anthropology. So I was, although I was aware of folk medicine and Chinese folk medicine in particular, I wasn't aware of the pangolin until this. But no, it's studying the myths and stories of traditional people. Because I long ago realized anthropologists are very presumptuous to go into a population and tell stories about them. Much better to meet the people personally and say, what is your story? And that's what folklore anthropology is all about.
Love it. Andrew has asked, and you may have addressed this a bit, but we'll bring it back. But in your second climb up Fitzroy, the second time, bring any special insight into yourself?
Yeah. It was that I was far too interested and needy to have specific successes, that I had to put importance on the highest mountain or this end goal, and realized that the life is firmly where you live it. And the goal of adventure is to focus our awareness. Like when you climb a rock, you're in that moment. So anytime you focus your awareness and are feeling fully alive, you have attained some degree of success as an adventurer. It's not geographically specific or demanding incredible adversity or living on the edge of death.
Pedro here says the virus is man-made. There's one for you. I don't know, Pedro, but here's a question I want to know. Since you're my neighbor here, and I miss you. Would you ever move back to San Diego, and what would make you? If you did.
I wonder if Jack or Yeshi have kids and we have grandkids, if Jaffe and I might be persuaded. That seems to be a depth of feeling that we hear about but have not yet experienced. That seems to have tendrils that reach into your heart and pull you all the way around the world. The only reason we would ever move back is for our friends and family. But quite honestly, to be living in Ecuador at the literally where you walk out your door and you're engulfed in an adventure. Pedro's from Chile, so he knows all about living in Latin America. Pedro's been to visit us here in Cuenca. I don't think so. There's a kind of materialism, a kind of pressure and freneticism that exists in the zeitgeist of Southern California. Moments like that.
I just put up, and I didn't mean to interrupt. I was queuing up my next thing, and it's live. So finish your thought, and then I want to talk about this.
But life is all about, ultimately, it turns out to be relationship. Jaffe and I love being here. We love being here together. It brings out the best in both of us. And we love the people here. We love the relationship with these wacky Latinos. There's a kind of heartfulness that is ubiquitous here. And for us, going out on the street and being able to say hi to everybody and make friends so easily, there's a beauty that exists in the nature. I don't like in nature. I hate to say in nature, but it also is exemplified by the people who live here, including my dear friend Pedro, with whom I disagree about the virus. But we'll have a conversation about that, Pedro.
Over a scotch, I think. Over a
scotch.
Yeah, I agree on that. Okay, so there's a photo here that I teased a bit. So there's a story behind this photo. Now, I've known Jeff and Jaffe for, I don't know, probably it's 10 years. We're pushing 10 years now. Introduced through George Walter, who is on with us, I think, still. And you lived in my backyard. I didn't know that, and we got together, and I met Jaffe, and I've even got artwork by Jaffe here in my home that I'm so happy about. But for a long time, you guys were just living together. What happened?
Yeah. What happened? My story is that I knew that we were heading off to South America together, and it seemed like the kind of thing a man does not ask a woman to do without making a commitment on his part. Plus, I realized it was completely indisputable that I had met the love of my life. And so I asked Jaffe to go out to a dinner at there in Del Mar, Encinitas, one of those restaurants by the ocean, and never one to miss the opportunity for a good line. We ordered a seafood dish, and it came with calamari. And so you can see in this picture, I found a little calamari ring, and I put it on her finger and said, "Dear, will you calamari me?"
Nice. Come on. Is that romantic? That is
How romantic can one get?
Come
How
on.
more romantic could one be?
Well, you could be Indiana Jones. You know, before Indiana Jones came out, you were wearing these hats, weren't you?
I had a hat. I had the big fedora on Lake Titicaca. I wore it around. You know, many people say who's based. There I am. There's the fedora.
Yep.
This was many years before Indiana Jones was even born. Going around Lake Titicaca on a reed boat, I wore the fedora at all my adventures. So, yeah.
Anyway, you are
a
ultimate romantic, and that is, yeah, I love it. I got to go back to the chat to see if we have some more. John's got some things here about we're gonna go and another thing, since a lot of adventures on there, and I'm glad that most people have stuck around. So before the last thing I want to talk about is that, you know, you've got a lot of wisdom from climbing the mountains, from being thrown in jails, from building, you know, we all are some of our experiences, and we're all on a journey, and this is a crazy journey. And you and I talked the other day, and we were saying, you know what, you find adventure where you want to find it. Okay. I found it today in the technology, and when I'm done, I'm going to find it when I have to manage my edible herb garden out here that's giving me a little bit of troubles with some critters, and that's an adventure. I've got a battle to rage, and yet I want to be able to eat these things whenever I want to. But what would your advice for adventurers of any kind, who maybe right now do feel that fear, and you know, they are unwilling maybe to risk, you know, worrying about the fatal outcomes? And I don't mean fatal in the muerte sense, but just, you know, some things might not work out. What advice do you have for people to get through these times?
Well, two things come to mind. One is my favorite bit of advice I got from a wonderful man who's no longer with us, Jeff Lowe, the remarkable ice climber, who said to me, he was already in his wheelchair. He was the leading ice climber of our time, did the north face of the Eiger in winter, but wound up getting a Lou Gehrig-like nerve disease, disintegrative degenerative disease, I guess it's called, and was in a wheelchair, and he couldn't even talk when I interviewed him. And Connie Self, who was his sweetheart, did the interpretation because he could only grunt, but he was in his wheelchair. And he said to me through Connie, you got to do the thing you want to do when you want to do it, because later on you won't want to, and you wish you had. He didn't say you won't be able to, which would be kind of trite, but you won't want to. So I think in our lives, we are many people at different times. And the key to having a happy life, I'm 67 already, but I look back and I have no regrets, because there's very little, there are very few times I misbehaved. A lot of my friends are on here and they know that it's true. I always misbehaved whenever I could. I always did the thing I wanted to do, which sometimes was selfish, but no longer do I want to or need to, because I did that thing. And I think that's the real role of adventure in our lives, is insisting that we do the thing we want to do when we want to do it. It gives us a thing to do, because then we really come to know life and have no regrets at the end that we never came to know it. But the other thing is, like in this coronavirus situation, Jaffe and I, we laugh an awful lot. Some of it's hysterical laughter and probably not appropriate, but it's enjoying ourselves. You know, sadness, and there's enough pain and sadness in the world already, that when we're surrounded by it, like always in the mountains, at the worst possible times, when things seem the most grim, the really wonderful adventurers, those who survive, are those who now know how to find the humor and the absurdity in that moment. People in the concentration camps that found humor, to find humor, and not to need to search for it, but to see it. That delight, appreciation for any great thing. Today we saw an interview with No, it was on the Sunday morning show. It was a fellow who was giving food away from his restaurant, and he was almost bankrupt himself. And he said, "I'm not going to starve. I'm never going to starve." And that's it. We're never going to starve. No one here is going to starve. We have friends who will take care of us. We have sofas you can sleep on. We're not going to starve. And if we're not starving and we're alive, there's no reason not to be delighted with the moment, delighted with whatever it is, the way the shoes feel on your feet, the hand that you're holding, the sunrise in front of you. There's endless reasons to delight and to laugh with joy simply because we're not dead yet.
Yeah, we feel the sun on the face too. I find the joy of just when I live alone and I've got a cat, and then when the purr of a cat that gives me so much joy that I'm elated. I jump around. I'd like to turn the music up and just dance while my cat looks at me like you're out of your mind.
I said it's a great way to end this show, Alan. I think you should go for it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do well. Not live. We'll hold that off. We'll see. Maybe the YouTube. But I had a girlfriend who had liked to be a little bit more structured than my curious self, and used to whenever she got angry and that things just and I would be doing something and I'd invite her. She couldn't do it for 1 hour. She used to say to me, I mean, this was a phrase constantly I heard. Is all you want to do what you want to do when you want to do it. You can't do that. And I said, oh, yes, I can. Oh, yes, I can. And that is true. It's a great wisdom. And the other is, as the old adage is, you never really regret what you do. It's just you regret what you didn't do. And as your ice climber said, and it's not that you. How did you phrase it? It's you won't want to do it later in life. So what do you want to do now?
I want to get another glass of scotch.
Okay, good. Get a glass of scotch. Yeah. And then I phrase
the coaster's clear.
Hey, so I posed that question as we wind down Journeys episode 3 with Dr. Salz. Jeff, what do you want to do? And go ahead, punch into our chat room right now. What is something when you leave here, ask yourself, what is it you want to do? What could you do when you can do it? And we all know that's an unknown, but maybe there's something you want to do that you can do right here. What is it inside you? And if you can't answer it right now, think about it after we've wound down the webinar.
And if I could just maybe a little addendum to that. What is some adventure that you can do right now in this time of quarantine? I mean, that would be a good outcome of this event. If somehow you look now at not the confined situation you're in, but the magnitude, the wonder, the possibility that remains. There may be 1,000 things you can't do, but there's still 9,000 things you can do. What would be an adventure you could have right now, even before we're allowed to wander the streets and the mountains?
Yeah, what kind of adventure? So those two things. And Bobo just popped in and he says, look, how do you make people laugh? He wants to know.
I just say your name, Bobo.
Bobo. That is pretty good.
How do you make how you make people laugh? You find something that really amuses you. You give it a little dose of extreme candidness. And then you just sort of laugh. If you laugh yourself, you make people laugh. That's what it is.
This is true. Clinton wants to visit you in Cuenca. Here's some of the answers we're getting in. John wants to make a difference in making corporate cultures more life-giving.
He's a man to do it.
Beverly has gratitude and perspective. Doris says sunshine, laughter, discovering new pieces of yourself, and sea salt chocolate chip cookies. How about that? And Dick says, Dick Plush, zootic, freneticism, zeitgeist, ubiquitous, linguistic adventure abounds. There we got a linguist in our thing. All right. There's a guy who's flown around the world on an airplane many times. Yeah. Well, this is great. We've given our audience some things to think about. I've had an incredible time, and I really apologize again that I totally gapped on starting this, but we'll let that go. I'll fix it in the mix. And I want to thank Jeff for taking time out of his afternoon. What time is it in Cuenca?
6:37.
6:30. So about dinner time there, and you're going to open up the windows. And I heard him earlier when we were testing. We did have audio, and the rush of the river I could hear out there. So it is the city of the four rivers. So enjoy that. Thanks, Jeff. Thank for all of you for your patience and tuning in with us. Tune in with us next week. I've got Ryan Pyle. He's a Canadian. He's holed up in Istanbul right now, where they are locked down. He doesn't know if he's going to get out of it. So we'll be in Turkey. He is a TV host of Extreme Treks. He's also ridden his motorcycle across the entire country of China and India. Amazing adventurer and more life lessons and adventures to talk about. Thank you, Jeff Salz. Thank you. I love all of you for tuning in. This is Allan Karl with Journeys. I'll go ahead and do the old take the headphones off. I do that so I don't hear myself in the speakers. Thank you. I love all of you, especially Jeff. All of you who tuned in and had the patience and stuck around, even though we've gone over. Allan Karl Journeys. We'll catch up with you on the next round. Thank you for tuning in to the Journeys Webcast. I'm Allan Karl, your host. Be sure to tune us in every Monday. The time changes depending on where we are in the world. This is Allan Karl. Where will your next journey take you?